Ladies and gents, we're back with another replay. It's the game that everyone's talking about. Magnus Carlsen versus Hikaru Nakamura played yesterday in the Armageddon match. Now, as I'm aware, Hikaru had the white pieces and had 10 minutes, and I think Magnus bid around 7 minutes. So, Magnus only needs a draw to win the match, and Hikaru must win. This is their Armageddon match that currently everyone's talking about. Let's get into it. Okay. Hikaru the white pieces opens with knight to f3, going for a reti, which is something I've played against a few times and have varying degrees of success with. So don't forget, Hikaru started with 10 minutes, Magnus with like 7. Okay, we get d5, g3, going for the King's Indian attack of the reti style opening, and Magnus copies with g6. We get d4, opting for a very symmetrical style setup. Bishop g7, bishop g2, and knight to f6. As you can see, they are currently mirroring each other's position. Castles and castles. Okay, fairly even here. They're symmetrical position. And we finally get pawn to c4. Going for a Catalan, like a reti transposing into a Catalan style setup. And I struggle against the Catalan. It's a very interesting opening, and I have varying degrees of success against it as well, actually. But okay, I mean, Hikaru has to play for a win here. If Magnus draws, he wins the matchup. So, we get c4, c6. And we get a queen to b3 here. This has all been played before, I think. There are probably quite a few games in the database where this has been played. We get d takes on c, and we get queen takes on c4, best move. Here, the engine says best move is bishop f5, and bishop f5 is the move that was played by Magnus. We get knight to c3, just developing one of the other knights before developing the dark squared bishop. Knight b to d7. Finally, Magnus is fully developed now. Just needs to bring the queen off of the back rank, and he's ready to rock and rumble. And Hikaru responds with bishop to f4. As you can see here, very symmetrical-esque style setup. Other than these two knights, everything here is pretty symmetrical. So Hikaru's going to have to pull some crazy stuff out the bag to win this game. We get knight to b6, adding some pressure onto that queen, asking questions what you want to do with the queen and what's your plan. Hikaru just moves the queen right back to where it came from, queen b3, and we get knight f to d5, taking some more control of the centre, asking what you want to do with this knight and also putting some pressure on that lovely dark squared bishop, which you probably don't want to trade off just yet. We get the move bishop to e5, saying, okay, if you want, you can take my bishop and I'll get a nice centralised knight as well. And your nice fin-shadowed sniper down there will be no more. We get knight takes on c3. B takes on c3, recapturing with the pawn. And bishop to e4. The engine giving a slight advantage to Hikaru by 0.4, but not much in it. We get bishop takes on g7, getting rid of Magnus's lovely little sniper in the nest there. And king takes on g7. Always duly noted, I've learnt from my own personal experience. The king being exposed to dark square diagonals or any checks of any kind is always something you need to be cautious of. Obviously, the dark square diagonal is currently pretty locked, but if that was to open up, you always got to bear that in mind, but I'm sure Hikaru won't be forgetting that. But I, on the other hand, do quite often. Okay, so we get rook a to c1, just bringing in the rooks now onto the c and d file. It isn't doing anything sat there over on a1, so it gets it into the game. And we get c5. Immediately, Magnus is challenging White's control over the centre, getting rid of this pawn, and cracking this can of worms open right in the centre. We get d takes on c, and knight to d7. Falling back. The bishop nicely defends the pawn on b7. The knight is attacking on c5, The double pawns are a weakness. Magnus obviously knows he can just target them and quite easily take those off. We get second best engine move by Hikaru, queen to b4. Adding some pressure onto that light squared bishop, asking questions. What's your plan? What are you thinking? We get knight to f6. And h3. Bishop to h3. Very interesting move here. Again, eyeing that scope onto the c8 square so that Magnus's rook can't come across and add some pressure onto these weak doubled c-pawns. Very interesting move. Again, very interesting move there. I have played some moves of that nature in the past, but I mean, at the end of the day, the light squares are quite under control by black, so why not put the bishop onto a more active diagonal? And we finally get Magnus developing his queen with queen to c7. Rooks are connected, and you're pretty comfortable. We've been in the middle game for a while, but you're pretty comfortable in the middle game now. Engine says it's pretty much equal, and yeah, that's about right. Okay. Here we get knight d4. Getting one of the knights into the central square is usually pretty useful, and it's got many good squares from there where it can go to like b5, put some pressure on the queen, and now the bishop is x-raying the king's castle, but there's nothing to worry about. Okay, we get b6, offering Hikaru an excuse to get rid of his doubled pawns, which I'm sure he did accept, and he did accept. C takes on b, a takes on b, and we just get queen drops back to b2. Keeping everything nice and solid here, guarding the a2 pawn, guarding c3, putting some defense onto the d4 knight, and also defending the rook on c1. Keeping everything nice and solid here. Are a few weak pawns in Hikaru's position, but also Magnus has an isolated pawn there as well. Yeah, interesting. But again, Hikaru has to win here, so he's trying to grind down Magnus's clock by playing pretty solid moves at a quick pace. We get rook a4, potentially going for the double up of the rooks with rook f2 a8. And we get this very interesting move here by Hikaru. Bishop to e6. Obviously, you cannot capture, because should you capture, the knight will recapture with check, and you will look like a fool, and that will be good night, game over. But very interesting spot by Hikaru there. I like that. I like that theme of chess. Just very hyper aware, very aggressive. Hikaru definitely in flow state, spotting moves like this. Great move there. But was it an engine recommended move? It was. It was the top recommended move by the engine. The only move that keeps the eval bar happy at 0.00. So very interesting move there. Good spot by Hikaru. It also adds some defense onto the a2 square if he should ever want to drop it back to say b3. And the best move here is h5 apparently for black. But Magnus moves the rook back and goes rook to a5. This is already a stressful position, and I'm not even playing the game. Here the engine says f3, which I mean looks uncomfortable to play, to say the least. But we didn't get that. We got bishop to b3, as I said, obviously, because me and Hikaru are buddies like that. Dropping the bishop back, putting some pressure down here, nicely defending the a2 square, keeping everything very nice and solid. And we get e5. Dislodging Hikaru's very nice centralized knight. You can't allow that knight to sit there. It was scoping so many beautiful squares. You've got to contest the control for the center. And we get knight to c2. Just dropping back and saying, all right, if you won't let me have this outpost, I'll probably reroute to b4 and take this outpost instead. Still controlling many very nice and very comfortable squares. Here we finally get h5 from Magnus, going for a little of a kingside pawn push. And Hikaru parries it with h4, which is not one of the recommended moves, actually. The engine here at depth 24 says knight to e3 is best. But I assume allowing h4 feels pretty uncomfortable, considering that Magnus can swing his rook over onto h8. You don't really want to allow that, so I can understand why Hikaru would go for h4. Seems pretty solid, but the engine doesn't like that. The engine says, whoa, whoa, whoa. Magnus is better now. It's -1 for black. The move here you have to spot is queen to c8. Spotting that infiltration down here and going for some kind of attack. Interesting. I'm sure... Magnus didn't play that. He played knight to g4, which loses his advantage in an instant, but hey, it happens to all of us. Now here... I mean, my noob analysis is thinking about this, but I guess actually... No. Yeah, the check would probably not be too comfortable. No, definitely not. So yeah, if you're looking at f3, you are greatly mistaken. Here, rook c to d1 and knight to b4 are two of the top recommended moves, or queen to... no, sorry, c4, yeah, just c4. We get knight to a3 by Hikaru there, and the engine tanks again in Magnus's favour. And Magnus decides to go with g5, which is very, very committal. Magnus's king is a little loose on this side here, going for a full-on attack. Got some nice pieces directly looking in front of Hikaru's king. It looks pretty good, but a little shaky on the king's defense. We get knight to c4, adding some pressure onto the rook and asking questions of the rook. And here we get g takes on h4. Magnus allows Hikaru the option to take the rook. Hikaru says, no thanks, buddy, I'll play f3, which is the move I suggested earlier. But of course, queen c5 check, and ooh, looks... I mean, this is a mess. This is a mess, but hey, I mean, if you're playing for I mean, to say that Magnus only has to draw to win, he's playing very, very aggressive style of chess. So interesting choice from Magnus. We do get queen c5 check, king to h1, and we get bishop to a8. Just keeping that very nice, lovely pin down here. Saying, no, you cannot capture. I'm going to keep that there. But still offering Hikaru the option to take his lovely rook on a5. And we do get knight takes on a5. B takes on a5. And the engine has shifted momentum here. And into Hikaru's favour. I mean, yeah. It's been a pretty crazy game, actually. I've been told it was crazy, but I didn't know it was this crazy. And here, Magnus goes for... Oh, no, sorry. Hikaru goes for e4. Shutting down the dark squared diagonal, stopping any nasties. Also reopening a threat of taking the knight on g4. And here, Magnus, again, just leaving pieces all over the board, says, no, mate. It's calm. I'm not bothered. H takes on g. Closing in on Hikaru's king. However, the queen is on the second rank, so it can come to some defense. So, a little shaky, but nothing crazy. And here we get bishop d5. Contesting Magnus's light squared bishop. And trying to neutralise some of the pieces here to go down in endgame and just make sure that you don't get checkmated, basically, is your best port of call. Just trading everything off and trying to work on some of these weaknesses in Magnus' position, and same thing for Magnus, work on some of the weaknesses in Hikaru's position. Okay, we get bishop takes d5, e takes on d5, and knight to e3. Adding some pressure onto the rook on f1. Rook g1, of course, put some pressure down here. It comes to the check as well if you take the pawn. And Magnus just defends with h4. We get c4 by Hikaru, adding some defense onto the d5 pawn. And also, bear in mind, 2 connected pass pawns down these files would be pretty good for Hikaru. Wink, wink, as you'll see later on. Okay, we get Queen D4. Magnus coming in for the little infiltration, but the engine doesn't like that. The engine says here you want to play F6. Yeah, of course, F6, duh. And that's why engines are way better than us. Just to get rid of this little weakness here, defend the pawn on E5, just push F6, and it's -1 for black. Who would have thought it? I mean, you're down an exchange, but you're closing in on the king, and there's a few weaknesses. Arguably, black's king is much safer. You've got this pesky knight in your near all your pieces. So here the engine just says F6, but Magnus plays Queen to D4, which the engine does not like at all. We get Queen takes on D4. Yeah, I can see why this would be a bit of a dubious move, because now these 2 pawns are uncontested. We get E takes on D4 and D6. Now, bear in mind at this time, but Magnus was considerably lower on the clock than Hikaru. The engine hates D6. It says here you want to play Rook GD1, Rook CD1, target this, take it off, and then defend this pawn, and then just push the pawns. After you play D6, here the engine says after King F6 for black, black is much better by -2.7. Did Magnus play? I assume he did not, based on the result of the game. He played Rook to B8, taking control of the open file. However, little bit sketchy here with allowing Hikaru to push his pawns uncontested rather than going for the F6 move. Okay, we get Rook to B1. Hikaru says, no, sir. You shall not have thy open file. Fair play. Can't blame him. And we get Rook to D8. But now here, you can spot the move. Your granddad could spot the move. Maybe even your dog could spot this move. But I'll give you 10 seconds if you want to find the only move in this position that is winning for white. It's not a difficult one. I'll give you 10 seconds, or you can pause the video now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The move indeed is C5. Duh. I mean, it's not that difficult given the fact in this position there's actually not many other options, really. You're not going to leave him to take your beautiful passed pawn. Why not just defend it, keep the open file for yourself, and yeah. Magnus is stuck between a rock and a hard place, as the saying goes. And now the engine is heavy skewed in Hikaru's favour, and I'm sure +3 for white, Hikaru will be able to capitalise on it. Okay, we finally get King F6 by Magnus. Sorry, Magnus. Couple moves too late, buddy, but hey, I can't blame you. You were low on time at this point. Yeah, I can't talk shit, can I really? You know what I mean? Magnus had beat me blindfolded, quite literally, so it is what it is. And here we get this very, very good move. And again, really the only good move in the position. You can pause the video here if you want to try spot it. I'll give you 10 seconds, but there's only one move. It's +5.1 for Hikaru, and it was played in the game. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The move indeed in question was C6, saying, okay, if you take, I'll push, and then if you drop the rook behind the pawn, I'll just contest it, and you will be much worse. Yeah. Easy. I assume for Hikaru at this point, Hikaru is very comfortable and very confident, because knowing Hikaru, he's great under time pressure. And with this much of an advantage, it would be hard for him to mess this up, or even anyone to mess up this given position. The advantage is heavy skewed to white. Okay, we get Rook takes on D6. Boom, with the C7. Straight in there. Hikaru says, yeah, mate, I'm going for the queen. I don't care what you're going to do. We get Rook C6, as I've just predicted. And we get Rook G to C1. Obviously saying, okay, then, I'll contest your Rook. You can take it, but then I'll have 2 rooks against your knight, and you'll definitely lose. We get some final last-ditch attempt by Magnus, C4. Now here, can you spot? I don't know if it was a brilliant. I'm going to call it a brilliant move. I mean, it's probably quite easy for Hikaru to spot. But another pause the video moment. Pause the video here and spot this brilliant move by Hikaru Nakamura. I'll give you 10 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Boom. We get rook to b6. Disgusting. The rook is pinned to the king. Threatening to promote. You've got niche. You've got nothing. GG. Magnus plays rook takes on b6, but it doesn't really matter. Hikaru just says, okay, thanks, good sir. c8 queen, and it was in this position Magnus Carlsen resigned the game and Hikaru won the matchup in Armageddon. Big up Hikaru Nakamura, you beast, you animal. Smashing it. What a crazy turn of events. The eval bar was all over the place. The clocks were low. Hikaru had some advantages. Magnus had some advantages. Couldn't capitalise. It's part of the game. But I hope you've enjoyed this recap, guys. And I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.